That's always frustrated me too, because that sentiment that, well, we have two sides, and I'm sure they're both reasonable, and so we'll cooler, rational thoughts will prevail, and tempers will settle down because we all know the truth is in the middle. What's right is in the middle. That is a shockingly common sentiment among the American populace, and talking about, well, the right and the left, they're both horseshoe theory folks, And I always like to point out, I was like, okay, can you tell me any historical figures that you look up to? How many of them would you say were centrist in their time? Like, how many? The list is pretty short of people like, oh, we're so glad that was a great compromise. Good job. I mean, that's not. Well, that's not how it works.
Like, I'm genuinely trying to think of an answer to your question, TJ.
I'm sure you can find some. I'm
Mr.
sure you
Rogers?
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers. Well, no, Mr. Rogers wouldn't even count. Remember when seen that picture where he has like a kid's pool, and he has his shoes off and he's got his feet in there, and he has it there with the black guy? Like, that was
was that a big thing?
Yeah, it was a controversial thing back then, because you guys ever hear the things about black folks can't swim? There's a reason for that, and it's because black
community go all the way back to Mr. Rogers.
Well, I mean, it ties into the water thing. Okay. So yeah, that would be weird if Mr. Rogers was connected. but swimming pools didn't exist in black communities, and they were only in white. And then people who had pools in their own houses were already rich and less likely to be black folk. And there were whenever desegregation happened, white communities would shut down swimming, but they filled them with concrete rather than share them with black people. And like, you've all seen the picture, I'm sure, of like the guy like pouring battery acid or something into a pool when black folk are in it. Like, black folk weren't around water much, and so like desegregating swimming pools was still like a major issue. So him doing that was, oh yeah, look at this. And so yeah, even Mr. Rogers wouldn't have been like considered like a centrist person. But something I wanted to go out, EK, I didn't know about this thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that she stayed on because she wanted to be.
You not know that, TJ?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Symbolic reasons. The woman had so many damn health problems in the end, and
that is fucking wild. We talked about trivial things that alter the course of history. I didn't know it'd get that trivial. That is. I mean, look. No, I don't get it. I try to think about it. I don't get it. Like, that symbolism isn't worth it. If I'm 88 years old and I've already like beaten cancer twice, I am not rolling the dice, that I'm going to live through this and my candidate's going to. No, that's insane. I got the smoke for her too. And what I got written down here? Oh, Sinema. John, you were talking about it. Kyrsten Sinema has been fascinating to me for a lot of the reasons we just talked about. Is that generally, when you have someone in a position of power, like in the Senate, you have a trade-off. Hey, you do well for me, I'll put a bunch of money into your campaign and make sure you get reelected. And she was young. Like, I don't think she was 50 years old, or she's not dead. I don't think she's 50 years old. She could be in the Senate for a very long time. And I'll donate a bunch to a super PAC, and you can keep this seat perpetually. That's usually the trade-off. The other trade-off is like the Paul Ryan way, that you stay in office for a while and then you cash out with a corporate consulting job, which is just free money because they have access to your knowledge of the system and the people that might be maybe not even in the Congress, but people in government that can help you out. Sinema could help out with the first part because she definitely has those connections. Like, it's not just limited to the Senate. She could never be a lobbyist, so that wouldn't help them out at all. But Sinema coming in, if you watch like any clips of her from before she was served in Congress or the Senate, she seemed to be like a decent leftist or progressive. Like, her rhetoric seemed on point. And I remember whenever she was being sworn in, I don't know if you guys remember this, and it came out that she was the Senate's first openly bisexual member. And did you guys see the pictures of Mike Pence swearing her in? And I saw these memes talking about, oh, look how uncomfortable Mike Pence looked. He looked like Mike Pence. I remember watching this and like, you guys are reading into this. Like, that's just Mike Pence. That's what he looks like all the time. I don't know why. And that annoyed me because, listen, like, representation is good. Like, we all know, we all agree, having people of color, having people of the queer community, represented in media or in government, that is a good thing. It's not the only thing though. And so when she hadn't served a day yet, and putting all that stock into that kind of bothered me. Turns out she turned out to be a dud. And so that kind of weird. But Sinema is a weird one. I don't really know. Manchin EK, I want to bring this up to you because you mentioned how Manchin is a walking conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is an interesting term to me, is why I'm bringing it to you, because it's not a conflict of interest at all. It is a convergence of interest. It is like that's what it is. It's a weird term. It's like, no, this is very convenient for Joe Manchin. There's no conflict whatsoever. So I always thought that. I think that's an interesting term. But yeah, it's just pretty odd. And one thing about Joe Manchin, because you're right. Whenever that happened, I had forgotten so much. That's how awful these folks are. You forget the stuff that they did. But when the Republicans were flirting with Manchin, say, "Hey, man, why don't you just become a Republican?" That was really funny to me because it showed, what kind of person Joe Manchin was. Also, it was a dumb request by the Republicans because as the senator who's in the Democratic Congress, who's like on the cusp, he has immense fucking power. He was essentially the president of the United. Why would he give that away to give the Republicans a 51 seat? Then he's useless. Like, why do they want that at all? So it's funny that they were dumb enough to make that request. Like, his only option was to leave, and he's big. He fulfilled the American dream. He scammed people and he made a bunch of money off his family. And there's no better representation of American than Joe Manchin. I don't know what you guys gonna say about that.
I'm just gonna say I want to, because we've gone on for a little bit with this segment, but I want to kind of circle it all back to the premise of the article that you mentioned that I originally sent over, TJ, is the centrists getting out. I think it's kind of bullshit. There's plenty of centrists. Joe Biden is one of them. He's the president of the United States. But I wanted to take that idea seriously. If the center fizzled out and we were left with a party of the relatively far left, and I'm not talking like full-on communists, but like, Nordic system fucking leftists and MAGA Republicans, I feel like that'd be a very good deal for us, because the thing about us is that our policy is very popular. People really like universal healthcare, free weed, universal pre-K, free education. Like, people like these things. People hate fascism. And it would be an utter destruction. We would get everything we wanted if the center actually got out of here. And that's why we always say the liberals are just the fucking stopgap ratchet in our democracy, because they stop us from moving left. Because that's what would happen. Am I crazy there? Does that seem like a crazy take? That if we actually had only extremists, the left would dominate?
I mean, it depends. Oh, go ahead, BK.
It's so, like, one, the Democratic, like, nearly everyone in the Democratic Party is a centrist of some sort.
Let's say we have the entire Democratic Party is Bernie Sanders, and the entire Republican Party is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who wins that election?
Yeah, when you put it that way, okay. When you put it that way, because I was thinking, because like there's some places like the Senate's the main problem, like it always is. That if Marjorie Taylor Greene ran in Wyoming, she'd win. If she ran in Idaho, she'd win. Yeah, man. Oh God, I don't know. It depends, because here's the thing: if it wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene and it was a far right winger with like a personality, like say it was Trump, like say instead of Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's Trump, then yeah, we'd actually be in trouble. I think because the Senate is so wildly anti-democratic. But that's an interesting concept, though, because that's kind of what we're banking on is becoming the actual representation of the left wing of the nation. And it's funny that I'm tepid against this, because this is literally what I'm fighting for. But it's funny, but I think the same thing. But of course I went to doomerism. But yeah, I'm with you, John. I like it.
Yeah, I think like if it was just the actual far left extremists versus the actual far, I think the far left would win every time, because it's like, hey, dude, we want free food. Like, is gonna trump over we want everybody to be broke and homeless every single time. So, like, with the exception of a charismatic leader stepping in and be like, actually, I have no problem with giving everybody free food, but not those people. That's where the danger comes in.
Yeah,
the charisma has like does all of the heavy lifting for you when nothing else will work. Because like all Republicans run on right now are the culture war issues, because their economic policy is horrible. Like, none of them can get on a microphone and say, all right, like Trump wants to cut the corporate tax down to like what 15%, like give even more money to these corporations that are getting on a microphone with their whole chest and telling people we're gonna have surge pricing at Wendy's, like, or you guys should eat cereal for dinner. You guys should like, hey, I notice poor people usually do this one thing where they eat cereal for dinner, and you guys are complaining that regular groceries are too expensive right now. You guys should eat cereal for dinner like the poor people. Like you got CEOs getting on microphones saying that shit right now. That's the stage of capitalism that we are currently in. So like people sprouting out, like the Republican economic policy is what enabled that to happen. Like tracing that all the way back to Reagan when he was cutting tax rates and like getting rid of the law against stock buybacks and everything. Like, but charisma makes that happen too. So it's I think it would be cool. I would prefer it to be like that, but like charisma is a dangerous thing.
It is. It is.
From what I'm hearing, we are officially forming the donut party, where we just cut out the center and pray for the best. So, all right. Cool.
Good stuff. Good stuff. That was great. That was really fun.
I was. If you were to like, if I were to place bets on which one of these segments would be the longest, I would not have bet.
Right?
One.
Yeah. There was just this.
Well, I didn't expect EK to come in with the haymakers.
EK came in. Holy shit! I mean, that was like some Street Fighters, like Hadouken, just right up in the face. That was amazing shit, man. That was you mentioned the cereal for dinner thing. That was so funny. And once again, like you can't help but laugh at this shit.
It's an Onion headline. Like
yeah,
right, Onion headline.
Right. Like, it's just, where do these guys get the balls? Like, where do they get the ball? You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me back during the pandemic where you had that guy go on Fox News. He was talking to Laura Ingraham, and they were talking about, paying people to stay home during the pandemic. And he goes, we need to dry this up because like the best dog is a hungry dog, to make sure people went back to work. We got to make sure they're hungry. It's like, I just can't.
How do you not just punch him? How does the hurt? Like, how do you not just? I want to punch him. I'm a fucking pacifist, but like, if someone said that to my face, I would get violent.
Yeah, it's like if I was in that position, like let's say I was some CEO richer than God, I had power over all these people, I was helping craft, policy to enrich me every day. The last thing I would ever do is go on TV and tell poor people how they're pieces of shit. They need to get back to work. I wouldn't say a word. I wouldn't say a goddamn thing. And if I did say anything, it would be what people used to do. Is like, I have nothing but the utmost respect for, the working class. They are the backbone of this nation. Like, that's what I would be doing. But these guys like lack the self-awareness. Like they're being Marie Antoinette, like in front of millions of people. And it's wild to watch. Like, I can't believe it.
They know they're insulated from it. They know they'll be okay either way, and like that much money like basically has an effect of like turning you like against or of completely isolating you from what normal society is, from what normal thought is. Like it's poison it, and it makes them, it emboldens them to say stuff like that. Or when you and everyone around you, everyone travels in your circle is like that, you start to look at everyone else, especially those poor people who are working for you, is like, as like ants, and they deserve to be where they are. Which also something else that Joe Manchin said. I think it was back in 2020 as well, when people were talking about giving people more aid or more money or something like that. And like Joe Manchin was like, no, people are just going to spend it on drugs. Like that's what his actual quote was. Like, they're just going to spend it on drugs. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure people will spend a lot of that on drugs. Insulin is expensive AF. Like, you try to buy an EpiPen, you got to buy a new EpiPen every year. Those things are like what, $5,000-$10,000 or something like that. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of that aid would get spent on drugs. Joe Manchin, you're right.